Money held in RRSPs dropped by 28%.
But only make a small dent in sky-high house prices.
Why government tax advantaged accounts are benefiting the wealthy more than the middle class.
So when I talk about America's middle class being dead, Canada's middle class is literally non-existent right now. It is shrinking by the day.
The working middle class now being called the invisible poor. And this report calls people making between $40,000 and $125,000 middle
will never
class.
be able to retire. They are struggling well into their careers in their 40s, their 50s, and even their 60s. And they're still struggling to make ends meet every month because the cost of living is ridiculous. It has gone through the roof.
What would be your first reaction if the government of Canada came out and said, guess what? We're going to raise the contribution limits for RRSPs and TFSAs. Would you be excited, or would you really care less because you're not maxing out either of those programs? So increasing the ceiling doesn't really help you at all. If so, you're not alone.
We bought our home before the pandemic, before house prices skyrocketed, and we still haven't even gotten close to maxing out even one of our TFSAs. Mine is barely even close to half full, and my wife's is completely empty.
Only about 10% of Canadians, or 1.5 million people, max out their TFSA contributions, and only 21% of Canadians max out their RRSP contributions, and only 2% of Canadians max out both their TFSA and RRSP. So who is this really helping? Between 2022 and 2023, the top richest 20% of Canadian households saw their disposable income increase by $11,266. Want to take a guess at how much the bottom 20% of Canadians gained in the same time period? Just $93. That's a 121 times smaller increase. These numbers aren't random. They're a symptom of a larger systemic issue. Our tax system, housing policies, and social programs are all designed in ways to deepen this divide. So how did we get here? Let's look at some of the government policies that have led to this growing divide, which are impacting you the most, and what the government can do to better the situation for every Canadian. The illusion of help, how government programs fail millennials. My friend Michael saved $15,000 last year into his TFSA, the exact amount every financial expert recommends a first-time homebuyer should save. Yet when he went to purchase a starter condo in Toronto, he found out that he only had half of what was required for first-time homebuyers. Michael's situation isn't unique. Millions of millennials are realizing that the system is failing, and they're all sharing in the disappointment, coming to terms with the fact that the system is stacked against them. In the 1980s and particularly the 1990s, interest rates were much higher, but homes were much more affordable. Relaxed mortgage rules in 2022 were supposed to make home ownership more accessible, but this only helps some people that could already qualify for massive loans. A couple earning $80,000 combined, slightly above the median household income, faces rejection from most banks even when just trying to buy a modest condo. The math doesn't work. When home prices rose on average 120% from 2015, while wages only grew by 23%.
It's so hard. It's so expensive. It's so darn expensive to live nowadays.
Anyone else feeling stressed with the rising cost of living these days? Between the economy crisis and tariffs affecting prices, it's getting harder and harder to stay ahead. I literally just left the grocery store, and staying within budget is feeling so challenging.
Same amount of housing, no infrastructure, no plan. That's how we end up with a $2,800 basement rental. And landlords advertising open concept because there's no actual kitchen.
Hey, we got another great option here, because who doesn't love sleeping next to a complete stranger in what looks like a dungeon, essentially, and only for $500. So great deal again.
Just as mortgage rules fall short, so do savings programs. TFSA and RRSP programs follow the same flawed logic. Contribution room accumulates whether you can afford to save or not. Someone making $60,000 a year can realistically save about $3,000 and contribute that towards their TFSA every year after expenses. Meanwhile, high-income earners can easily max out their $7,000 contribution limits effortlessly every year. These programs are often presented as universal benefits. However, they're more like a ladder with missing steps or rungs, ones that wealthier Canadians can easily climb while others are simply left behind. The pandemic made this imbalance worse. When interest rates dropped to 0.25% in 2020, property investors quickly swooped in. Multiple property owners now control 1/3 of the homes in British Columbia and Ontario. These investors benefit from the capital gains tax, which only taxes them on half of their profits, while millennials are fully taxed on every dollar they earn from employment income, while they're trying to save up for a home.
I don't know how everybody else is doing it. I don't know what kind of money you're making. Where are you guys working? Normal jobs. What are you guys doing? Because apparently I'm doing something wrong.
Significant portion of voters might resist policies that could lower housing prices, fearing it would diminish their wealth. This creates a conflict. While renters struggle with affordability, homeowners may unconsciously support the status quo. It's not about blame, it's about understanding how our system quietly maintains inequality.
I have $0 to my name because I just took out every penny that I've ever saved. And this is on top of the deposit I've already made to buy a house. Wow. Down payments are really large and I'm broke now.
In case we haven't met, I'm Aaron, a 20-year corporate accountant and analyst living in Western Canada. If this sounds like something you'd be interested in, consider subscribing to my channel. In 1986, a young adult could save up for a down payment on a house after 5 years of full-time employment. Today, it takes roughly 17 years to save up for that same down payment. 30 years if you live in Toronto or Vancouver.
In Toronto here, for example, if you take the average income and the average house price, it would take you 29 years to save up for a down payment. So, you know, if you're for a down payment, not to pay it off, forget paying it off.
The government keeps tweaking mortgage rules and increasing TFSA limits, but these changes ignore the fact that up to 40% of first-time homebuyers now rely on family support to come up with that down payment. Gifts from family averaging about $82,000, creating two different distinct classes of homebuyers.
It is so expensive to live, and people are finding themselves in a place where they want to help support their children.
What are they paying for?
Yeah, so there's 4 categories that we take a look at across the board that we're seeing. So one of them is going to be housing. So housing, really we're taking a look at that is about, you know, it's rent, is it mortgage?
Number 3, the tax trap. How tax policies favor the wealthy. A nurse earning $75,000 a year pays a higher effective tax rate than the top 1% of wealthy Canadians. That's because our tax system treats different types of tax income unequally. Employment income is taxed at full rates, while capital gains, the profits from selling investments or property, is subject to only half that tax. As a result, someone making profits of $200,000 from selling investments is subject to less tax than someone earning an employment income salary of $90,000. This distortion in taxation is not a technical flaw. It affects real people's paychecks and lives. The top 1% wealthiest Canadians now control 26% of the wealth, but contribute only 11% of the total tax revenue. This means while the wealthiest enjoy massive gains, the everyday worker shoulders more of the tax burden. Middle-class workers in particular shoulder more of this tax burden because of their fully taxed employment income. Recent changes to the Alternative Minimum Tax, AMT, were supposed to address these imbalance issues. However, 2024 amendments made it easier for high-income earners to preserve their advantages. In case we haven't met, I'm Aaron, a 20-year corporate accountant and analyst living in Western Canada. I talk about personal finance, investing, and investment portfolios. I try to represent the voice of the middle and working class person in Canada the best I can, and I speak from experience. If all of this sounds like something you'd be interested in, consider subscribing to my channel. Between 2004 and 2022, tax reforms reduced progressivity by cutting personal and corporate tax rates, disproportionately benefiting those at the top. The capital gains inclusion rate, unchanged for decades, remains a glaring loophole.
The federal government is going to be spending more money on Canadians while taxing only the richest and still providing tax exemptions to small business owners. This is a win for everyone. And if somebody is telling you otherwise, either they have more millions of dollars than they know what to do with, or they literally don't know how taxes work.
The income gap reached a record of 47.1 percentage points in 2024, measured by the difference in disposable income between the top and bottom 40% of households. This gap isn't accidental. It's the result of years of policy decisions that favor wealth accumulation over wage growth. Even tools like RRSPs and TFSAs follow this pattern. High-income earners can easily max out their TFSAs or RRSPs, while middle-income Canadians struggle to save meaningfully. A worker earning $60,000 per year might struggle to save $3,000 and contribute that towards their TFSA, while someone making $200,000 a year can easily max out their contribution limits, doubling their advantage. Number 4, retirement roulette. Why pension plans aren't enough. My parents retired comfortably on CPP. Why can't I? The answer lies in how drastically retirement realities have changed. The Canadian pension plan was designed in 1965 for a world where most workers had stable careers with employer pensions and housing costs consumed just 30% of income. Today, it's like trying to sail a sailboat designed for calm waters through a storm.
Just under 1/3 of British Columbians say their finances are in a constant state of chaos.
It's really gone downhill in the last 10 years, the quality of life.
Our economic landscape has made that model obsolete. Take a self-employed graphic designer today. They face a 40% lower retirement income than a baby boomer with a defined benefit pension. Only 38% of millennials have employer pensions compared to 52% of Gen Z at the same age. Workplace pensions are rare now outside of government jobs, forcing individuals to rely on savings for retirement. Yet CPP replaces 25% of pre-retirement income for average earners, far below the 50 to 70% financial planners recommend. The contribution system hasn't kept pace with inflation or rising costs. Maximum CPP contributions in 2024 are capped at $3,867, but inflation erodes purchasing power. A dollar saved today won't buy the same amount of goods as it will in 2050. Meanwhile, housing costs now consume 60% of disposable income in major cities, leaving little room for savings. Millennials must now save nearly double to what their parents saved to enjoy the same retirement lifestyle. Consider Sarah, a 32-year-old teacher living in Toronto. She rents a one-bedroom apartment, spends half her income on housing, and struggles to save for retirement. Her wages have barely grown, while housing costs have tripled since 1980. Stories like hers highlight the growing wealth gap. The top 20% of Canadians gained $1.2 million in net worth since 1999, while the bottom 40% gained only $80,000, not even keeping pace with inflation. The enhanced CPP introduced in 2019 raises replacement rates to 33%, but full benefits won't be realized until 2065. Without workplace pensions, many people rely on TFSAs and RRSPs. However, contribution room means little to nothing without disposable income. In short, today's pension system leaves many scrambling to bridge a gap that continues to widen with every passing year.
Many Canadians, anecdotally, feel like their income is not going up, but yet costs, even though it's only 2% now, not 8%, they're still going up.
This wealth gap isn't inevitable. It's the result of specific policy decisions. In 1976, the top 1% controlled 8% of Canada's wealth. Now it's 26%. These stark disparities show how systems favoring capital over labor reshape society. Understanding these numbers is the first step towards change. Some things that the government can do, just throwing them out there, are 1, build and protect more affordable homes for both Canadians and Americans. Number 2, raise and anchor the minimum wage. Number 3, boost direct support for families. Number 4, invest in affordable child and daycare and early learning. Number 5, expand job training and ongoing learning. Now, in all fairness, I threw this in to ChatGPT and it literally spit out these answers in a matter of seconds. And they seem like practical, everyday solutions. However, I fail to always understand when the government gets into power and they claim all these big things that are going to happen, and how often has the middle class and working class been let down? Like, it happens all the time. Nothing ever really comes to fruition, right? Where all these big, bold promises are always made, and the middle and working class never see the results, right? The rich get richer. And there's a reason why all these high-ranking CEOs continually meet with the heads of government. Like, there's a reason behind it, right? And it's to protect high-level top 1% interests over all the interests of the working and middle class. Even though we outnumber them, they still hold more power. And if ChatGPT can spit out these easy, practical answers in just a matter of seconds, think what the government should be able to do if it were really trying over the years to come up with practical, real solutions for the middle and working class. If they really applied themselves, I think we'd see more results. Now, in fairness, both the Canadian and American governments have come out with various programs for the middle and working class. Some have worked, many others not so much. House prices have to come down and incomes drastically have to increase for most middle class Canadians and Americans. And here's something that absolutely blew my mind. The top 0.1%, the top wealthiest 0.1% of people in America and Canada own 24% of the S&P 500 Standard & Poor Index.
Which should already blow your mind, but let's continue.
24%. If we look at the top 1% of people in Canada and America, they actually own 50% of the S&P 500.
And the top 10%, well, now we're talking almost the whole damn pie, 87.2% of all US stocks. The next bunch of people, let's call them the well-off, they own 11.7% of all stocks. And the bottom half of America, by wealth, their piece of the pie is 1%.
Kind of a disproportion, don't you think? Will things change? I'm like you. I have no idea. The only way that I can see for a person to get out of this endless cycle is to start investing and learn about investing. As I've demonstrated, that 2 or 3% salary raise that you get every year, if you're lucky, can compete with investments that are growing 8, 10, 12% every year. So the real way for a person to get out, I feel, is to learn about investing and start making wise financial decisions. If this sounds like something you'd be interested in, consider subscribing to my channel. Hey, so I hope you got something out of this video. If you want to learn how to actually pick a stock, read a stock chart, the kind just like you see on Yahoo Finance, with all the graphs, financial ratios, all of that means for complete beginners, check out this next video here.